Kimbilio. It may be a foreign word for most of us, but it means something very universal: safe haven. In this instance, that Kimbilio refers to a community of writers and scholars who've made a commitment to developing, empowering, and sustaining fiction writers from the African diaspora. The Kimbilio community hosts readings, presents at professional conferences, and hosts an annual summer writers' retreat.
That's right. The collective will add another chapter to their story when they make their New York debut at the Mokata. That's Brooklyn's Museum of Contemporary African Diasporan Arts this Saturday as part of the Brooklyn Book Festival. For a little sneak preview of the event and to hear more about the African diaspora writing community, today we're happy to welcome Kimbilio faculty member Angela Flournoy. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, happy to have you from Ann Arbor. Allison Davis is the Associate Art Director at the Mokata. Thanks for joining us, Allison.
Thank you for having me.
And Kim Coleman-Foote, who will be presenting this Saturday. Thank you for joining us. All right, get in there.
All right, you three. Well, first I want you to put the African diaspora and in terms of writing into context for us, but maybe we should start with a little bit about Kimbilio, how it all started, and then put that into context with the African diaspora.
Take it, teach.
So,
Actually, I think Kim's going to explain it.
Kimbilio is the brainchild of David Haynes, a fiction writer, and he's published several novels. And, he wanted to build community for Black writers of fiction. Cave Canem is a similar organization for Black poets, and fiction writers didn't really have anything.
Something like
and
that.
so he wanted to really build this community, a place where we could come together and workshop, get feedback from each other, support each other. And so it started a few years ago, and the model is basically there are summer workshops, which are basically opportunities for feedback for writers. And there's faculty who come in and teach, and they kind of rotate between the different workshops, but we're basically building this community while we're getting feedback on our work. And it's a wonderful thing. I loved it. I've only been one time, and it was just amazing.
And where does this take place? Where's the physical plant where all this retreating and writing happens?
It was in Taos, New Mexico, which is the most
jealous.
magical, beautiful, calm. It's like 80 degrees, but it's not humid. It's just beautiful in the woods. I think it's Southern Methodist University.
They have a satellite campus called SMU in Taos. And it's beautiful, and it has really good food in the cafeteria, which is unusual. So it's a great place to be for a week.
Well, it's no Brooklyn, but if you gotta go somewhere, what's that experience like for the writers and the community to have this dedicated space and time to work and workshop and fellowship and all that stuff that I imagine happens?
For me, this was my first time being there as faculty. It was amazing. It was the first time I'd ever been around that many Black fiction writers, just period. So to be there with people who were really interested in sort of fostering community and helping each other improve their writing was just phenomenal. The readings that we had at night, both faculty and student readings, were just sort of opened my mind to how many different sorts of stories can come out of the African diaspora and how many of those are yet to be told. It was really exciting.
You guys are all Brooklyn-based, but is the group more international? I mean, are people coming from all over the place to Taos?
All over the country.
All over the country. How many members are there?
At this point, I'm not sure. I think the first group, there may be about 30. And it's grown. They've taken more people every year because you can go back for 2, or you can go for a total of 3 years.
Okay.
And so I haven't been back since the first time, so they've added more people, and it just keeps growing.
I think a conservative estimate might be around 50.
Yeah, probably, I would say.
So Allison, we know we go to the Mokata, we expect to see beautiful, mind-stretching things on the walls, and there's art. So how did you guys get mixed up with these writer types?
Well, you're a writer too, right?
I am a writer. I have a writing background. I write mostly for stage and screen.
Excellent.
My brain does not expand in the ways that are necessary for novels and short stories. So anyone who can and does do that, I think is amazing. As far as mixing up with the literary world, I mean, the Museum of Contemporary African Diasporan Arts, we encompass all the arts in that. Our culture all over the world is so rich, and there are so many aspects of writing, dance, visual arts, drama that too often are ignored in the mainstream international art world. And so we want to make sure that we're very inclusive of all of that. And there's so much out there, and it's not taught in schools most often, especially with literature in high schools and colleges that focuses on English literature, British literature, and oftentimes I know I had to really go out myself and expose myself to other writers. And it's an ongoing process, to be honest with you. So when we had the opportunity to work with great writers, emerging writers, people who are putting more work out into the world in that way, then absolutely we're going to jump on it.
So in the context of the literature, then, what defines some work as being part of the canon of the diaspora? Is it everything that's ever written by a person of color is in the diaspora, or does it have to be a certain genre or way of telling a story?
I'm not one for labels, honestly. I think, people from outside the diaspora, per se, can say that anyone who's of African descent is within that community, but, it's defined however you want. Even the term Black writer, a lot of people have issues with that, for example, but I think it's a personal choice. But obviously, people outside your community will always try to put labels and, categorize you. Where do we sell you? Where do we put your book in the bookshop, for example? Does it go in the Black literature section, the African section, the fiction section? So
wherever it's going to sell, put it right in that section.
or they think
Yeah.
that they think.
That actually makes me a little bit crazy when I walk into a bookstore and you see, fiction, science fiction, philosophy, and then Black literature, which encompasses all of those things.
Right.
We have Octavia Butler, we have James Baldwin, we have these fabulous writers who are writing across all genres, and it's often not recognized. So hopefully, with Kimbilio and programs like this, we can change that.
Right, because we have Angela and Kim as well. Why don't you guys tell us about your works, your recent works, what you're working on, how that's all going? I hear there were some awards received
we got a
recently,
knife
so
fellow at the table.
there we do.
So I've been working on a novel for many, many years. I won't say how many. It's a teenager, though.
It's okay.
And it's basically set in West Africa during the 18th century. It looks at the slave trade, not necessarily slavery, but the relationships between Africans and Europeans, which is very complicated and an untold story or a rarely told story. And also building in the contemporary, those of us in the diaspora who go to Africa. I spent some time in Ghana. I was a Fulbright fellow there, et cetera, and did research for this. And I'm also working on a story collection based on my mother's family in New Jersey, where I'm from 1915 to the 50s, and looking at the Great Migration to a small part of, Jersey that doesn't necessarily get the recognition that New York, Philly, Chicago, DC, et cetera, gets. In a nutshell.
Yeah. In a nutshell, just those little,
and there's
those
other
little
things,
projects.
but yeah.
Well, speaking of books, there's Turner House.
Yes, the Turner House.
The Turner House. So give us that breakdown and why
Sure.
it's so important in the context of what we're speaking about now.
Sure. So my novel, The Turner House, came out in April of this year, and it so far it's shortlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize, which I'll find out in December if I get that or not. But I'm happy to be on the list. The novel is set in present-day Detroit, and it tells the story of a family's history with a specific house on the east side of the city, which, if you guys are familiar with Detroit at all, is one of the sort of most depopulated parts of the city. So it's a story of this family's history of this house, how they got the house. It's also sort of a Great Migration story, because it sort of goes a decade before to the parents migrating from the south up north to Detroit. But it's also a story of present-day Detroiters and sort of individual challenges. And there's also a ghost, which I often forget to mention, but then people are very excited about it. So there's also a little bit of a ghost story in the novel as well.
Very cool. So can we expect to hear excerpts and stuff on Saturday? What's going to go down with the event Saturday?
There will be excerpts.
There will be excerpts. There will be ghosts, and there will be excerpts.
Family drama on Saturday. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
And
What else,
drama is
Allison?
always rife. It's a good place to start in
Yes.
a novel. So then Saturday, when should we be down, Allison?
When should they be down? I think at 5?
Just come
That
to
is a
Nakata
pop
and hang out all
quiz.
day.
That's a pop quiz. We
Right.
open at, the museum opens at 12.
Okay.
If anybody wants to come early, we do have a fantastic exhibit up that focuses on the Caribbean. It's 6 women artists and 1 man from all over areas of the Caribbean. And that actually comes down on September 27th, so now is the perfect time to come and see it before it closes.
So
And then stick around.
I'm not going to miss the opportunity while you two are here. Get me on the path, lay out a little reading list for me. The fall weather's coming. What should I be reading right now to make me smarter than when I started?
This is my favorite part.
Okay, good. This is all unplanned, but you came ready.
Actually, Kim's like, oh God, and Angela's like, yes.
I just love to shout out my friends. So on Tuesday, this Tuesday coming up, is that the 23rd, Chinelo Okparanta, she's a Nigerian-American author. Her first novel is coming out. It's called Under the Udala Trees. It's about 2 women who are in love during the Biafran War in Nigeria. I'm so excited about this book. And I want people to read it. I'm also very excited about another Kimbilio faculty member's book, Dolan Perkins Valdez. Her second novel, called Balm, came out in June, and that is certainly a book that I encourage people to check out. B-A-L-M, Balm, like lip
like
balm or lotion.
So I'm in a book club, and I think it's my turn next month to come up with one. Is there a good book club book? And it's a bunch of white guys too. So what's a thing that's gonna just blow their minds then, and mine collectively, whatever. We're all friends. It's very post-racial. Don't send letters.
Well, I mean, I think they should read both of those books.
Okay, so
But if you
Balm
want,
or Under, something that we can get around the table.
probably
and
maybe
talk.
Loving Day. Matt Johnson's newest novel, Loving Day, is about a biracial man in Philadelphia. There's also a ghost in that book as well.
You're right on trend. You're very on trend.
But that might be good fodder for conversation.
Loving Day. All right.
And if I may make a suggestion as well.
Please do.
A former staff member of Mokata just came out with a book of poetry called Other People's Comfort Keeps Me Up at Night by Morgan Parker.
Already sold with the title. Say it again. Allison says
Other People's Comfort Keeps Me Up at Night.
Love it.
She's fantastic, so
that's something to think about.
yeah.
All right. What haven't
Fall
we asked
reading
that
list.
should be included before we get out of here?
Tell us about this fellowship.
And you're the only one who hasn't given us a
Yeah.
title to read either.
A title?
Yeah,
Well, I
give
read a
us
lot of
some-
work by dead people. I read less contemporary fiction, but Octavia Butler, hands down, I love. Fellowships. Basically, I've won a NIFA fellowship, which is, when you get those calls or emails, it's like you won the lottery, but you didn't because you actually did the work and applied, et cetera, right? As someone told me, reminded me.
Right.
And I've also won an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship for an excerpt of my novel, The One Set in Africa. And so, for me, especially working on these projects for such a long time, and it's like, okay, everyone else is publishing along the way, and everyone's like, where's your book, where's your book? It's nice to kind of get these fellowships to tell you that, okay, this is really worthwhile, keep going with this, because there are days when you just want to give up, because it's so tough, and it's just, as you know, writing a novel, people think it's easy, you can just do it during your lunch break.
No one thinks it's easy.
Some people do. But when I win these awards, people say, oh, how'd you get that? I want to get one of those too. And I'm like, well,
You do.
but I worked, and
There were
even
tears.
during vacation, I work a full-time job. I'm taking off. I'm working late today to compensate for that. But it's work that you put in the hours, and you're forgoing sometimes your social life to be alone and do this writing, which is necessary for your soul. So
Tell us about
Yes.
going from that step to getting published. Was that challenging? I don't
I
know
have
anything about that world.
I have not
can talk
published a
about
book, but
a little
Angela.
bit. So there's a lot of different avenues that people take to be published, but one thing that I like to stress is that you have to write the thing first. I think with nonfiction, you can sometimes have a proposal,
Right.
and someone will give you a book deal. But with fiction, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know.
all out there, yeah.
So, but once you write the thing, it's really there's sort of various ways that you can get published. One of them is just a query, which a lot of people I know do, and then you get an agent, and then your agent hopefully has contacts with editors, so when the book is ready, they can send it out. But another way is, and it's sort of one of the great things about collectives like Kimbilio, because you can sort of pull resources and connections, and maybe you meet someone at Kimbilio who has an agent and they can introduce you to their agent, and it's sort of a way that you don't feel like you're out there just in the wild.
Has the possibility of the EPUB thing made it easier or less hurdles if you can publish electronically versus paper money thing?
I think it really depends on like what your genre is and sort of how involved you want to be in every step of book publishing. For me, I remember what my book looked like when I thought it was done, and I'm very grateful that I had an editor who sort of pushed me to really make it done. Exactly. So, so there's still some value to sort of the more traditional route, but it's one of these things, especially with getting more diverse books out, that I think a sort of valent approach is what needs to happen. You need to have books that are being sort of self-published and like e-published. You need all of it to happen.
And nowadays you can actually pay for an editor, you can pay for a book designer, make it look professional, but you know, again, it's kind of having someone vouch for it, someone, a company to put their money and faith and name behind it and say that we believe in this project to put it out there and give you money as a result. So that's a whole different thing. But yeah, definitely e-publishing, et cetera, self-publishing, you know, it's a way to go for a lot of writers. And it gets more work out there and more diverse voices.
Thank you so much for lending your diverse voices to our show today. This was phenomenal. I feel completely enlightened.
Great.
And I haven't even started reading it.
I know. There's so many books to read. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
here's some excerpts on Saturday at 5. Come earlier for the art. Stay for the literature at Mokata. Thank you so much for joining us.